Hi, welcome again to our fireside chat. This is part two of our dialogue where we cover the insights and outcomes of the first XM cloud migration in our region. Let's start with a few gotchas. Nat, were there any unforeseen circumstances that changed the project's direction?
Thanks, Greg. Well, it was the first project from an XM Cloud and Search perspective to go live in the region. And it wasn't a small project. There's 13 websites, big bang, all to go live on the same day on a new technology from Sitecore on SaaS. Now, this was a recently launched technology, and we found that there were 3 or 4 that either changed the direction or came very close to impacting the timeline. The first one I'm going to want to talk about is Forms. Now, Sitecore Forms was not available. So before the implementation ever began, we knew that Forms was not available at the time of the project. We were told Forms would be available midway through the project. And as the weeks went by and the weeks turned into months, the release of Sitecore Forms kept getting pushed back by Sitecore. And then came a point where we were told, okay, Sitecore Forms will not be available until after your go live codehouse. And we had to just pivot and we had to pick a different SaaS form solution. Now, depending on the requirements, it could have impacted our deadline, but we picked Jot Forms as a form solution mainly because it was simple, intuitive, and our intention was we go live with this, we then go back to CIMIC with a mini project of sorts to then transition back to Sitecore Forms once it's available. And this was successfully done with zero impact on our timeline.
Okay, that's really cool. Tell me a little bit about Sitecore Search, because it was also a very new product, right?
Yes, so during discovery, we looked at Algolia, Search Stacks, and Sitecore Search. Now, Sitecore Search, new product, but it's inspired from Discover, but mainly done for the content. So we picked Sitecore Search due to its ability to natively integrate and its ability to scale better with the investment Sitecore will be making on search, especially when we saw the roadmap that Sitecore has. Now, we knew that Sitecore Search was still in the early days, and we encountered issues with setup, debugging, and crawling speeds. I will tell you a little bit about the documentation on the debugging, especially because I think it came this close to just giving us a very big headache that could have changed the direction. Now, documentation-wise, Sitecore Search was limited. So the initial setup was a trial and error process because Sitecore themselves didn't have the documentation, so we were doing it together. There were no detailed logs, so any issues that came up, either of us were taking time to fix it because troubleshooting became very complex and it often required Sitecore's product teams and technical teams.
Yeah, I was about to say, it really sounds like they helped out. They knew there were some limitations, they knew it was an early product, and they really weighed in and helped.
Absolutely, like they weighed in quite heavily because it was the first project to go live, or even the first project we were all working on in ANZ at the time. The product teams, we relied on them quite heavily, and they were very happy to help out. So I don't see there were any delays, but just the number of issues that kept coming up it could have had a massive impact, but we had multiple people working from multiple parts of the globe to make sure we kept that on budget, on the fact that we could go on live on time.
Oh, that's a really great result. So there was always this strong undercurrent of needing to improve the content authoring situation. Tell me how that played out.
The first thing to remember is there's a shift in mindset. So midway through the project, we had the content authors from CIMIC. We had to train them up on how to use the platform, especially from a content migration perspective. And they have many websites, so we wanted to do it in conjunction, not after the whole build is complete. And the differences were very clear. These were people who were very used to building pages on Sitecore XP, and now they are building pages on a new platform which is headless. And there's a proper shift in mindset that needs to happen. So there's something called as page level publishing. Now, unlike in Sitecore XP where you could just publish in individual items, XM Cloud requires publishing the entire page that uses an updated data source. Just to be very quick on it, for users who have always been on a headless CMS, this change is actually very easy to get used to. But for users coming in from XP or a monolithic CMS where you're used to doing it a particular way, this is a shift in mindset.
I mean, there's also the question of, how to host the head, of course, with these new headless builds. So I think there was a Vercel question floating around in there and some decisions that needed to be made.
Yes, so all headless websites need a head to host the front end. Now, Sitecore never costed this in when they presented the cost of XM Cloud. Traditionally, they were supposed to give as a cost. They say you're going to host it on Vercel. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. That was never done. Now, XM Cloud uses Next.js, and initially we naturally had to go with Vercel. We vetted it up against CIMIC's requirements, and it passed. However, partway through the project, we found out that CIMIC's IT team have just changed a requirement to say, hey, we need custom SSLs, and Vercel doesn't cut it. So number one, we've not really taken into account the head's cost to host it. And number two, custom SSLs are required, and this prompted us to actually shift from Vercel to Netlify.
All of this was done, and I believe it was described as one of the best digital projects, undertaken by CIMIC and brought in, of course, 6 months early. There was the likelihood of some fantastic metrics around, measuring against the baseline of content authoring and all of that. So there were a couple of outcomes and learnings as well. Let's talk about those quickly if we can.
Before we actually go into the learnings, how about we spend just a couple of minutes on the outcomes? Initially, we were planning on going live with the CIMIC project with the corporate site first, and then every week with another site. This was done mainly from a content migration challenge perspective. Some of the sites would go 3 weeks later, some of the sites would go 1 and 2 weeks respectively. However, we had these amazing sessions between the discovery, design, and build phases. It was done during the design phase before the build phase kicked in. We called it the solution road mapping phase. In this, the customer, so the product team or the product owner from the customer and any other stakeholders from the customer is happy to sit in. You have the front end, the back end teams from our side, and the designers. They all sit in a room and they rationalize what it is that they are building. So the front-end engineers are supposed to answer questions from a build perspective about the impact the design will have on the build. How many components are we building? How many variants per components could we build? The goal is to have the design team and the customer have an idea about the commercial impact the design has on the implementation. That's one of the primary reasons we were able to deliver the project on budget months ahead of schedule. Because we
True
found
collaboration, really.
Absolutely right. Because we found out here that we don't need to have 60, 70, 80 components. We could have 1, 2, 3 templates. We could have 30 to 50 components and 0 to 6 variants per component. The other superstar in this, from an improvement team perspective, was Karen. So Karen's the senior manager for digital and comms at CIMIC. She acted as a product owner, our single primary point of contact, and she managed a working group internally of few people. I want to say more than 6 people who all had their own requirements from their own operating companies. And they wanted to be slightly unique. So we had to bring in that theming functionality and the ability for them to change the components as they see fit. And she was an absolute rock star in this to work with.
Right. That's fantastic. Now, we're just going to take a bit of time to flash up some of the metrics around all of this.
So you can see some incredible investment metrics here. A 30% reduction in infrastructure costs, a 40% saving in estimated project costs with it being delivered 6 months early, and some very impressive time to value costs. A 70% reduction in team maintenance governance overhead, 100% faster to build new environments and new websites, and a 240% more efficient content creation process. In terms of visitors, 103,000 new visitors in the 3 months post-migration. Those people found it 50% quicker to find content, courtesy of Sitecore Search, an 8.3% month-on-month growth of new visitors, and a 12% increase on returning visitors. Those are impressive metrics.
So Nat, as you can see, the metrics were outstanding. The project success measurements were tremendous. Nobody could be anything but thrilled with the outcomes. So CIMIC have also told us that it was a really, really successful project. Can you talk about that for a second?
What they told us was that in the 20 years that they've been doing digital, this was one of their more successful digital projects. And that's a very high praise, because that's very close to saying, hey, it's one of the best ones we've ever had, without telling us that. And there's reasons for that, because they cannot just put that in writing. Verbally, they've been absolutely a joy to work with, and they've told us that we were an absolute joy to work with as well. Now,
when I was poking around this, I heard a rumor that there was 0 change requests, and that's got to be, you know, as rare as humanly possible in a project of this scale.
That is why they said this was one of their very successful digital initiatives, because they are very used to having this small little CR coming up and saying, hey, we need more money here. This is not actually in scope.
The usual digital march, yeah.
Correct. In this case, it was on point. Exactly what we pitched, exactly what was in the SOW when we actually signed off the build SOW, and 0 change requests. So they were happy, and we were just happy because we were happy because they would be happy to talk good about us and say, hey, thank you for the good project. So it was like a win-win for everybody.
Righto, that's a really great time to swing on to some of the learnings that were surfaced through the project.
Do remember that this was the first enterprise-grade SaaS CMS to go live in the region. So first in ANZ. Now, the first one I can share and tell you that this is an absolute must-have is Sitecore Premium Support. Now, what Premium Support is, Sitecore's 24/7 Premium Support, where they are on SLAs to respond to you same day. When you're on a website that is hosted on-prem, either you have an internal team or your Sitecore partner, or have it hosted with a dedicated infrastructure partner, and there's a lot of moving parts, but we can control it. You can control it, or infrastructure partner can control it directly. The only times you ever need to go to Sitecore as the vendor is when you have product defects, or when Sitecore issues a patch and that needs to be deployed by us. Now, in the SaaS world, it is Sitecore that upgrades the platform. It is Sitecore that manages the infrastructure. If the application is built well, when Sitecore does roll out a new release, sometimes there could be errors or bugs that would need Sitecore to jump in straight away to fix things. Now, having 24/7 premium support is a must for any SaaS implementation, because we found that there's more issues from a Sitecore's perspective, from a product perspective, that will just take away things or control from us as the partner and you as the customer. It could be a CDN somewhere that's just flaring up. It could be a CDN that's not behaving properly somewhere else in the world that is impacting XM Cloud licenses here. So premium support, that's the first thing, complete must-have. There were 2 other learnings quickly. The first one was the component library and template approach. The first thing was we need to build a design system, and you build a design system, and then you have a component library that sits within that, and you'll have variance between 0 and 6 per component. You do this to have a cost-effective project, but at the same time you want to scale to make your website future-proofed, especially from a website transformation perspective. Now, having one template for the corporate site with multi-teaming capabilities, one template for project sites, one template for marketing sites, is a very quick way for the content authors to reuse those templates, reuse those components, because the template is set in stone, but it's not really set in stone. You can still take out components here and there and make it look different. But we have given you a template to just speed up your way of creating pages. So that multi-teaming, multi-template, multi-component with multi-variants, there's a lot of multis in there. But that was a good learning thing from a customer's perspective.
Okay. And of course, Edge was involved in all of this as well, right?
Yes. In all SaaS implementations, Sitecore Edge is like the prerequisite from a Sitecore product perspective. And that actually is a nice segue for us to go to the last learning, which was search. We got quite a bit of learning from it, and Sitecore themselves got a lot of things to learn. Number one was the performance of the crawlers. So we learned that using one source for all 13 sites, led to a very long crawl time. It often exceeded an hour. And to improve this, we had to split each site into individual sources. Now, that would reduce the crawl time. It would improve the content update efficiencies. And to help with this, we also had to increase the number of crawlers. So this is different to how it was done from a Solar perspective on XP. where you don't really need to worry about it from a time perspective. The second thing was multiple sources. There was a challenge there, especially with Edge, because when Edge sent updates, it only provided the item's ID. I'm going a bit technical, but it would not provide the site's origin. So there's 13 websites. It doesn't tell us what site is actually the origin of this. It would give us the ID. And when you had to delete it, it didn't indicate which site the item belonged to. So you would have to delete it from all sources. And that's very different to how it's done from Solar. It keeps all of the metadata of the deleted item. So this added a little bit of not a little bit, added quite a bit of complexity for us, especially when it comes to tracking, tracing, if you have to roll back something, if you have to actually measure how it's working, or if you made a mistake deleting something and you want to actually redo it, you can't. So that was one of the learnings we got. So we just had to change it internally to have better user manuals and user guides set up, so people don't really just go willy-nilly delete things.
Yeah. Okay. So look, it sounds like it was three things: a super successful, project, outstanding success metrics, really great insights and really great learnings, and of course, it is a foundation for CIMIC to really go forwards. What does the future hold for them?
The future is CIMIC is a B2B brand. So all of the websites they have are mainly B2B focused, but CIMIC is also one of those big aspirational brands that will acquire new companies. And one of the companies they acquired was a company called Divine. Now, Divine is a B2C organization, real estate, completely different business model. And that website will be something that we will need to build now. We'll be reusing the component library, the design system, but we'll be adding in some more components that are more B2C centric to incorporate some of the earlier designs we have done for the current website, and we'll build something more bespoke to Divine and add that into our design system. Now, this website should not take months to do. It should actually be done very, very quickly. So hopefully the next time you and I speak, Greg, we can actually share how quickly this was done.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And of course, next time we speak, we might talk about the Cycle Experience Awards. We are hopeful that we might be able to submit this, but we'll see how all of that plays out in the lead up to the symposium event. So that's a wrap, Nat. Thank you very much for all of these insights and for the first two parts of these, and we'll reconnect, I guess, after symposium and see how everything played out.
Yeah, assuming we're able to actually go out and nominate this one and see where this goes. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to actually put this up as one of the strong entrants, because this was a very, very good project.
I hope so too. Everybody's hard work deserves that recognition, and I'm including Karen and the CIMIC team in all of that, because they were a fantastic client from start to finish on this project.
Yeah, we still have, I think we have 2-3 months before we're supposed to go with submit the application, and then it's just fingers crossed all the way.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, hopefully there'll be a great part 3. Thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to what the future brings.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nat.
Bye.
Bye.